Wow, it's Wednesday. Don't give up. We're halfway to that weekend, all right? Good morning. Now, on the rare occasions that I get to hang out with my friends, we often spend time debating all kinds of existential questions. One of our favorite questions that keeps coming up is this one. Can anyone at all be successful? Or are successful people born that way? Clearly, we haven't settled the matter definitively, which is why it keeps coming up. But one thing is clear. Successful people have certain things in common. Now, after years of reading about and meeting successful people, I think I've figured out the single thing that they all have in common. They never give up. They never give up. Probably the biggest cliche in the world, but also the only guaranteed way of avoiding failure that I can think of. You know, there are so many stories and testimonies that illustrate the fact that perseverance results in success. And whether you are born with the genetic traits of success or you're just working hard to make it in life, sometimes you just need to hear that one story which resonates sufficiently with you to flip that switch in your mind and make you decide once and for all to never give up in your pursuit of success in whichever area you're in. Today, I'm going to tell you my one story. Stephen was 10 years old when he started writing. Now, unlike most young gifted writers, Stevie, as his mother called him, knew immediately that he wanted to make a career out of it. So he started to send his work to publishers. This was around 1957. Now, as you can imagine, publishers didn't have much time or attention for the handwritten manuscripts of a 10-year-old author. And so Stevie got a great number of rejection letters from them. Now, I don't know how old you are, but I'm sure you hate rejection too. I know I do. The realization that you or your work are not good enough for someone can be the most heartbreaking and demoralizing feeling ever. If that's how you feel at your age, then imagine how it felt for a 10-year-old boy. Now, there was a nail sticking out of his bedroom wall, and the first time a publisher sent him a rejection letter, Stevie impaled it on that nail. Now, as the rejections kept coming, he kept impaling each new one onto the same nail, one on top of the other, and this went on for years. Now, in the year 2000, Stevie wrote about those years of rejection, and he recalled, and I'm quoting him, "By the time I was 14, the nail in my wall would no longer support the weight of the rejection slips impaled upon it. I replaced the nail with a spike and kept on writing." Today, that determined, persistent young author, Stevie, is known to you and I as Stephen King, author of 54 novels and over 200 short stories. Today, in spite of all those early rejections, Stephen King is the world's most successful horror writer of all time, just because he flipped a switch in his mind and decided that no matter how many times he was rejected, he would never give up. My dear friend, I remember how I felt when I read Stephen King's words, "I replaced the nail with a spike and kept on writing." As a 14-year-old, he realized what most adults still don't get, that you need to go through a lot of no's before someone says yes to you. But the reason why most of us fail is because we let each rejection get to us. We translate rejection to mean we are not good enough and never will be. But successful people have a different attitude towards rejection. They get excited every time they are rejected because they know that with every no, they are one step closer to a yes. Now, I don't know whether Stephen King was born with this attitude or not, but I do know that it worked for him. 350 million copies of his book sold worldwide, with so many of his works adapted into multi-million-dollar earning blockbuster movies. Well, that's sufficient proof that perseverance pays. So I decided to have the same attitude when I read that story. I flipped a switch in my mind and decided to never give up. Now, I don't know whether my one story will work for you too. I don't know whether you were born to succeed or not, but I do know that you can choose your attitude. You can choose how you handle rejection. So choose wisely and succeed. My name is Kojo Youngson, and I will never hear a yes if I don't learn how to take the nose. Good morning, Ghana.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to the AM News. Now, Chief Justice Kwesi Adeniyi is asking the Attorney General's office to provide details of criminals who are set free because they are able to falsify records of proceedings and use them as evidence to file appeals. This was after Director of Public Prosecutions, Yvonne Atakra Obuobisa, revealed such records as signed by court officials, making them appear legitimate. The CJ says he will order a probe and impose sanctions on officers who assist in such falsification of records.
Please, you try and let us hear for us to take remedial measures, because if we are not very careful, it will certainly be perpetuated as if we are impliedly endorsing it. Yes, when we had no knowledge at all. So please, it's a passionate appeal from me as the Chief Justice. If any fictitious record is detected in criminal proceedings, please, you let us know, and we will trace it to the registry and deal with the registrar. Yes, because so far as when immediately it is certified, it comes with a signature. Yes, it comes with the signature of the registrar. Yes, who certified it. So the AG's office can also help us and address this problem, because it is a canker which should not be allowed to grow. It's a very, very serious.
We now go to Parliament. The Speaker has vowed to resist any attempt by the presidency to slash the funding amount requested by the legislature and judiciary in the 2021 budget. Alban Gbagwin first raised the issue with the caretaker Finance Minister Osei Mensah-Bonsu and the Vice President during the presentation of the 2021 budget last Friday, when he stated that any slash in the budget's estimates for the two institutions will not be tolerated. The President's Executive Secretary Nana Santibedietu, in a letter to the Speaker, however, announced that the two arms of government would have their budget slashed by nearly 200 million cedis, citing current economic challenges. The Speaker has since replied in a letter he says has already been dispatched to the Presidency, indicating the Constitution bars the Executive from revising the estimate presented by the Judiciary and the Legislature, since they are all equal arms of government.
The budget is not for the Executive. We have the final power to approve or disapprove. And so what the Constitution has done is for them to make recommendations and to negotiate during the deliberations of the budget before the House. It is not for the Executive to impose ceilings on the judiciary or Parliament. We have to do the proper thing. And so during the consideration of the estimates, honorable members, particularly the committees concerned, take that on board. At the end of the day, come and inform us as to the negotiated figure, not the ceiling that has been given by the President. That is not the intendment of the 1992 Constitution. If you do otherwise, I, as your Speaker, will not append any letter for submission to the President for his assent. I mean what I say. The weakest link in our democracy is Parliament. And because of that, we are not able to control things like corruption. We are not able to hold the executive to account. We are not able to get the rule of law going. We are the arm to leave that. And so far as I remember the Speaker of this House, I will insist that the right thing be done.
Meanwhile, the minority in Parliament has vowed to reject the 2021 budget if government fails to accurately state the country's fiscal deficit. Spokesperson on the Finance Committee, Kesa Latofosing, alleges that government has in the past misreported the country's fiscal deficit, citing the exclusion of about 9.8 billion Ghana cedis in 2018, a situation he believes has contributed to the economic mess. Contributing to the budget statement on the floor of the House, he argued government cannot blame the wobbly economy on the COVID-19 pandemic.
That is not the case, Mr. Speaker. The situation of misreporting actually started back in 2008. Mr. Speaker, now I prove this. Mr. Speaker, I prove this in the sense that, Mr. Speaker, an amount of 9.8 billion Ghana cedis was excluded from the fiscal. Mr. Speaker, this was excluded from the Speaker, Mr. Speaker, and the IMF document here confirms this. Mr. Speaker, if you have the IMF Article 4 document, April 2020, Mr. Speaker, contrary to what our Minister responsible for Finance informed us, the IMF says that in the year 2018, our deficit was 7%, and certainly not 3.9% of GDP. Mr. Speaker, clearly you could see that the part is increasing and not actually reducing, as we've been told by the budget statement. Mr. Speaker, again, if you are to track the year 2019, you will notice that, as we've been told, that the Minister informed this House that the fiscal deficit was 4.8% of GDP. If you are to express it in nominal terms, it means that we spent more than we could raise by an amount of 16.89 billion Ghana cedis.
Well, Information Minister Kojo Nkrumah, who moved the motion for the debate, insisted government needs to raise revenue to achieve its economic recovery program. He also indicated that to achieve President Akufo-Addo's dream of making Accra the cleanest city in Africa, it will be prudent to pay a little extra in that regard.
Right, Honorable Speaker, to do all of these things without worsening our deficit position or our debt position currently, it is important that the administration introduces some revenue measures to support it to do so. I want to quickly refer to Article 36, 2C of the Constitution, and with your permission, I'll read as we connect the policy underpinnings to our imperatives. Mr. Speaker, the Constitution says, the state shall, in particular, take all necessary steps to establish a sound and healthy economy whose underlying principles shall include ensuring that individuals and the private sector bear their fair share of social and national responsibilities, including responsibilities to contribute to the overall development of the country. Mr. Speaker, we are at that point where every Ghanaian has to chip in a little so that we're able to recover and fulfill our objectives.
Away from Parliament, stakeholders in the Bono East region are being urged to adopt new strategies capable of ending adolescent pregnancies in the area. Statistics available to the Department of Gender indicates that the region in 2020 recorded a total of 5,738 adolescent pregnancies. And Nat Sabit was at a stakeholder workshop on a 5-year strategic plan and came through with the following report.
Worldwide, and it is linked to several social and economic consequences. Here in the Bono East region, a total of 5,738 adolescent pregnancies were recorded in the year 2020. Regional Director at the Department of Gender, Ms. Joycelyn Adi, says the situation is worrying.
For the Bono East region, adolescent pregnancy can be classified as a menace because we took a trend of adolescent pregnancies within 2018 to 2020. And looking at the figures, you see that in 2020, where COVID had an impact on us, we still recorded cases worth 5,738. Although a marginal decline, we think it should have gone down than this. And so looking at adolescent pregnancies, it has caused so much harm to the girl child in the region.
As a means of ending this menace, the Bono East Regional Coordinating Council, together with the Department of Gender, held a sensitization workshop with key stakeholders on a 5-year strategic plan to end adolescent pregnancies in the region.
It is our hope and wish that it reduces drastically. And that is why we have called these stakeholders here so that our efforts will be synergized, because sometimes we have contradictory messages, but we want all of us to carry one message across. So the participants here are putting up work plans whereby we can all implement. When we implement this work plan, we are hoping that it will reduce drastically.
The RCC, according to the Regional Coordinating Director, Mr. George Padmore Mensah, remain committed in ensuring that various NDAs are supported in their quest to end adolescent pregnancies.
It's a major challenge in our region when we talk of the Chiman and then Kintampo. And so we are committed as a Regional Coordinating Council to encourage our district, municipal and district assemblies to support the stakeholders so that they can do the sensitization and awareness program, and the girls will be empowered, and then to ensure that they protect themselves from this teenage pregnancy.
And finally, to our Ghana Month moment, there are two monuments in the Western Regional capital of Takoradi that tourists are most likely to be introduced to. One of them is a statue of a fetish priest known as Komfuase. The other is a statue of a fish. These monuments serve as a point of convergence for almost every occasion in the town. Today, in our Ghana Month series, correspondent Natalia Kwanzaa brings us the history and meaning of these age-old monuments.
Welcome to Sekunde, the administrative capital of the Western region. Sekunde has a lot to offer in terms of culture. For our Ghana Man series, I will take you to one particular spot called Komfuase. The place for years has become the center of attraction because of the popular Yesu Asor, a festival celebrated by the people of Sekunde during Easter. Situated at the center of Sekunde and fence is this gigantic priest look-alike statue with feathers around his head, a piece of cloth around his waist, holding two horse whisks, 4 white round band lies at both legs, one leg lifted and the other down. For years, people have called it Komfu, literally meaning a traditional Ghanaian priest, and where it is situated, Komfuase. But is this what it means?
The name Komfuase is a corrupted name for the original name of the place, meaning Kundum Dances Square. And I repeat, Kundum Dances Square. But because the image looked like a fetish priest dancing, and then when the short history was erected at the place, people did not bother to read it. And so those of us who don't know anything about Kundum dancing started calling the image Komfu, Komfu, Komfu. That's why we have the Komfuase. But it is not Komfuase, it is Kundum Dance Square.
History has it that in the year 1947, the then DCE for STMA, Major Kobna, built it for the community to symbolize the Kundum dance, which is part of the Kundum festival celebrated by the Ahantes and Nzimes. 65 years Samuel Tano was just about 8 years when the momentum was built. He narrates how it was raised.
This place has been coded to stop people from coming to that area, because before it was used, there was a pipe, free pipe at that same place. People used to fetch water there, but later they stopped people from using that pipe, and it was coded. The word is coded. Okay, so they stopped people from coming there. Later, when they opened the codings, we saw this man standing there, like that Komfu.
How did its original meaning and symbol become misplaced?
This is a symbol to show the tradition of the Ahantes, especially those in Sekendi, that we don't dance Adwa, we don't dance Palogo, we don't dance Abaja, we don't dance Bobobo, we dance Kundum.
To a visitor to Sekunde, what he or she sees is a Komfu, and therefore going to that area was easily referred to as Komfuase. Samuel Tano, however, thinks residents and travelers have just not taken a critical look at the structure to differentiate between a priest and the statues of the dancer.
The statue is in the picture of a kundum dancer. The dressing is what the kundum dancers use to dance that kundum. But it is almost like it is almost similar to a kung fu, a priest. That is why people used to call it kung fu, kung fu, kung fu. But when you look at it perfectly or well, you look at it very well, and if you know kung fu and you see a kundum dancer, you may see a little difference between the kung fu and the kundum dancer.
In recent times, conscious attempts have been made by some indigents of Sekunde to correct the historical mistake by referring to the area as Kundum Square, for the present generation to know that the statue is indeed depicts a Kundum dancer and not a Kung Fu. Enamase is another sport. Was back in the days the Independence Square, a sight to behold, especially at night. Those born during the independence describe it as small London. Samuel Mensah is secretary to the Sekunde Queen Mother.
You know, you have the beach here. That is where traditionally all our people get their income from. And that is the place to this beach is situated. So we just wanted to erect that to tell you that most of our income comes from the beach. And it is true, the catching, sales, smoking, and selling of fish.
And that's a little bit of a Sekunde history for you to always remember as we celebrate Ghana Month in the month of March. That's it for the AM News with me, Mama Vio Swabwaje. Well, thanks for staying with us here on the AM show. Welcome to the review segment of our show where we look at the headlines in the newspapers. We will also touch base with our online portal, myjoyonline.com. So Ben and I will go through the papers. I've got, Ben, I have the Times Daily Guide and the Daily Dispatch.
Well, I have the Custodian, the Accra Times, Republic Press, Business and Financial Times, and the Daily Graphic.
Okay, so if I may, let's start with the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Here's what's on the front page of the paper today. APAM at standstill as remains of 11 teenagers laid to rest. We told the story extensively yesterday, Monday, and on Tuesday as well. Also, 10 million euro e-waste management facility to be constructed in Accra. No record of blood clot linked to COVID-19 vaccinations in Ghana, according to the FDA. Now, this is such a serious matter. Quite a number of countries in Europe have held on to the what's the name of the vaccine?
AstraZeneca.
AstraZeneca.
So you're talking Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and it appears more are adding
Norway,
up now. Yes.
Yeah, I think about 10 or 11 European countries. But today, Thursday, there's the European. There's a certain organization,
yes.
Medicines something.
It has come out to say that, look.
No, not yet. Their report is expected later today.
Well, as of what I read yesterday on Sky News, they were actually suggesting, I think it's the EA something, that it's one of those organizations, health organizations. Yeah. And it came out to say, following suit to what the WHO has said, that there was no evidence that, these blood clots were being, or as a result of, using the AstraZeneca vaccine. And yesterday, again, as I interacted with Dr. Bediakon and Dr. Siedu, both of them indicated saying that, look, even paracetamol, some of the commonest things we take, they have their own contraindications, which include these. And if you have millions of people taking these vaccines and you have 22 people out of the millions getting it, that is an insignificant, it is 0.000 something, you get it. So blow this out of proportion, well.
Yeah, I'll pick the story of this report that's expected later this afternoon, that Germany and France are particularly waiting for that report so that they can make a decision and move forward. I would pull it up from the BBC in a bit and then share with all of you. But of course, the FDA, that's our regulator, that's saying that they do not have any record of blood clots linked to COVID-19 vaccinations. I must also add that even those European countries do not have evidence, as the World Health Organization has said, that is directly linking the blood clots to the vaccine. But I guess the reports will clarify things a bit later on.
Mama, even from what I hear, getting injected breaks a muscle. It breaks vessels, blood vessels and all of that. It can trigger anything. It depends on the makeup of the person, the person's underlying health issues. So many things can come together to create clotting in one person and not in another. So even the injection itself could cause so many things.
Yeah. All right. There's another headline here. Tension brewing at Upper Disco. Irate youth attack Queen Mother and others. This was also covered in our news yesterday in the center spread. That's the tragic incident of the children drowning in Apam, the burial and the funeral, actually. And, well, listen, we know that this is tragic. It broke all of our hearts. And I guess particularly when the children were being laid to rest, I looked at the pictures and the ages and I was totally heartbroken. But they've actually defied a certain order here, because if you look at the center spread, and I don't know if we have the center spread of the Ghanaian Times so we can show, there was a specific directive, not the front page, the center spread. There's a specific directive from the president that said not more than 25 people could do the burial. This is not the church service or the ceremony that essentially sees them off. This is burial. But you can actually see, I don't know how many people, maybe you can do the counting. And this is the cemetery. As they were laying them, they were finally laying them to rest.
It was quite a scene.
If we just zoom in on that, you can appreciate what I'm talking about. This is way more than the number required. Way more than the number required. Absolutely not. I don't want that to take away from the tragic incident, but this is certainly breaching the directive, like in your face right there, and that should not be encouraged. Also, Ghana, Burkina Faso to collaborate in addressing mining challenges. On the back page of the paper, Ghana, Japan signed $83,105 grants for Abrim Berase Chips Compound. And I hope that I really didn't massacre that name. FGO demands policies responsive to plight. That's the Federation of Disability Organizations. They've called on the government and other major stakeholders to develop policies that are responsive to the plight of persons with disabilities to create an integrated society with equal opportunities for all vulnerable persons. They shouldn't even be making a call. We should know what is right to do because they are very much a part of the society. Then, okay, let's see. Page 3, some crime stories. Shop attendant gets 10 years for robbing students. This is the Asante Bekwai Circuit Court that has sentenced the shop attendant to 10 years imprisonment in hard labor for robbing a student nurse. Akwesi Anoche Boateng, 24, pleaded guilty and was convicted on his own plea. And his accomplice, only identified as Omega, is on the run. Prosecuting police detective inspector, Chief Inspector Stephen Ofori told the court presided over by Mr. Timara Diboro that Miss Tabitha Mensah, who is complainant, is a student nurse while the convict lives at Abuabo, a suburb of Kumasi. The court heard that on February 21, 2021 at about 3:30 p.m., the complainant was attacked and robbed at knife points by Boateng and Omega while walking from her dormitory to the classroom to study. And the story goes on to say Miss Mensah, they asked her to hand over her cell phone or else she would be killed. Omega snatched the complainant's Techno Spark 4 Air mobile phone valued at 500 Ghana cedis, Check the details out. 500 Ghana cedis and an earpiece valued at 10 Ghana cedis and cash of 10 Ghana cedis and bolted. So you see, 500 Ghana cedis plus the earpiece plus another 10 Ghana cedis in cash, and you get yourself 10 years imprisonment. Yeah.
Question is, was it worth it?
Yeah, that's it. Big question. More details of this is also
but the other angle, the other aspect of this would be commensurability. Act versus punishment.
Yeah.
What the criminal code says, what the penal code says. You know, for a long time we've been talking about, oh, Asamesi stole, you know,
this one is not just stealing,
I get it.
There was a knife. I will kill you.
I get it. But in the past, we've had these incidents where someone says, look, and it's not justifiable, but I was hungry. I had nothing to eat. I stole tubers of yam. Gets X number of months or years. You have a state official siphoning our money, our taxes. Now we're being taxed even more to the tunes of hundreds of thousands and millions. How often do we convict them? And what are the sentences? Yeah. So these are
I appreciate where
problems we must,
but for
we
me,
definitely
with this
must
particular
look at.
story, because there was also the death threats, I think that the guy involved absolutely deserves it.
These people who siphon this money, they cause death to a lot of citizens. Well, they rob ordinary citizens of healthcare, of proper roads, of those sums of money they take. We lose billions every year in corruption.
I appreciate the sentiment, but the difference is the law.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Because the judge is looking at what the law says to deliver or to give.
Yeah. It's not the fault of the judge. It's the fault of what our law is saying. I'm concurring.
This is what should happen to you. Then there's nothing that we can do.
Yeah.
You know.
We need to take
I guess
a lot
advocating for the laws to be changed. Well, fortunately, the new Attorney General is very open to such suggestions because he says that they are actually also looking at drafting a law or a bill that would take some kind of punishment. You don't have to go to prison for any kind of offense. So alternative sentencing regime is also what they're looking at in the future. Ben?
Let's check out some others, but I just wanted to go back to what I was indicating earlier. So I saw some articles. I can't find them immediately, but at least this one by Thomas Moore, a science correspondent of Sky News. And just the headline would be this: COVID-19 vaccine and blood clots. Every medicine comes with risks. The certainty is AstraZeneca's jab saves lives. So we really ought to take stock. There are different risk factors in there.
The European Medicines Agency, that's the EU's regulator. And Germany, France, and Italy have said that they are awaiting the outcome of that investigation.
How long ago was this?
Agency.
How many hours ago?
Oh, this I read this late yesterday, but this is still on the BBC's website. But the timing they gave in terms of the report was Thursday afternoon. So we're all looking forward to today, Thursday.
Thursday afternoon. Oh, when they are expecting the supposed report.
Yeah, this is from the European Medicines Agency.
Right. Let's do the Daily Graphic now. Join forces to rebuild economy, Oforiata says. Apam drowning victims buried, double track reintroduced to ensure social distancing, and indiscipline unabated, motorway without rules. And as for the motorway, you know, I actually use it sparingly. Unless I have to go to that part of town, and I try to avoid, because the way people drive on the stretch is, and especially at night, I try to avoid it, like completely. It's crazy. Yeah. And you know, some stretches of the motorway are not lit, they are not lighted. So when you're using them, you have to be extra cautious. Then there is the case of sometimes robbers jumping out of the bush in certain pretty remote areas and, you know, coming at you. It's just crazy. But this one very briefly says, there appears to be no end in sight for the indiscipline among many motorists on the Accra-Tema motorway. On the 19-kilometer motorway on a daily basis, some motorists defy warnings to engage in activities that threaten lives and property. For 3 days, March 10 to 12, 2021, when the Daily Graphic monitored activities on the country's only motorway as a follow-up to a similar exercise in December last year, it observed that the illegal activities along the route were still ongoing. The indiscipline, and Mama, you might want to know this, maybe you've seen some of them, in the form of road diversions, illegal U-turns. I see that all the time. Illegal bus stops, dumping of refuse, and some of these abubuyas can actually, they dump it in the middle and they are gone. Dumping of refuse, farming, dangerous driving, among others, mainly perpetrated by drivers, slum dwellers, tricycle riders, and farmers. And, you know, I don't know, look at this. Just look at, if we can zoom in, I don't know, we wouldn't have page 3.
On the
but
bola,
look at this. I mean, for those of you watching, I don't know whether this can be, but look at this. Someone dumps this on this stretch of road.
So,
how do you do that?
So this is actually even tied. This has been contained, if you like.
Even the person has even done us a favor.
Scenarios where it is not contained as it is in this picture that Ben is showing that you see on your screen.
Look at that.
And it just spreads on the road. And do we need another law, a bylaw to settle that? Because sometimes the vehicles overturn, they dump the refuse on the road and they move on. And then you see vehicles
sometimes
passing
it's intentional.
over them. So
you know, coming to work, it was yesterday, even on our stretch, right? I think right before.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The whole place was replete with, and I was wondering what happened. Obviously, well, likely it is one of these.
It was an accident.
An accident. What do? You clean up. They left it there.
That's the thing. So
I didn't notice that today. Of course, it had been cleared.
The assembly later on had to clear the place up, but we can't continue to do this. Sometimes they are so reckless. You know that the vehicle is full and they are still collecting refuse.
It's all about the money, I guess. In other stories, very quickly, I'm still doing the headlines, and it appears Kiddy has landed it big with Fidelity Bank at home. Anyway, so UK to reshape its foreign policy. I was reading a bit about that, and they are talking about the so-called threat from China and other, China and Russia to the interests of the UK, and the fact that they brought down their GDP contributions to global, these agencies. The US has USAID, the Danes have Danida and the rest. So they too had to, they chipped down on their investments globally from 0.7% of their GDP to 0.5%. But now they are upping the ante again because of Charlie. The footprint of others and all that is maybe inimical to them. So they are reshaping their foreign policy, and it's also on the back of Brexit as well, some changes in there. But some Chinese tech giants have fallen under pressure, and this is from within. The likes of Tencent shed $60 billion from its market value as its share price slid over concerns of greater regulator policy. The likes of Baidu, Didi Chuxing, SoftBank, ByteDance, and SAMR, all of them affected. So that's it on the international front. I just wanted to take a look at this one. And he started talking about it. Watch over public purse with integrity. That's according to the Speaker. And he's also been talking about the supposed cuts to what Parliament should get. That's on page 19. Speaker unhappy with cuts in budget estimates for Parliament and the judiciary. We heard parts of that when Mamavi brought us the news. Join forces to rebuild economy. That's according to Oforiatta. That's on page 16. And all this talk about, Mama, we took the water, we got the electricity for free. So now you must also contribute your bit. But I kept saying at the time, I've not asked you for free water. I've not asked you for free electricity. Let me pay my bit. Now, how do I know I'm not paying way more than I ought to?
Some of us were not even within the category of those who enjoy the free
We didn't even,
goodies.
You see, that's even the point. We didn't even benefit.
No.
But well, on the other hand, the taxman will tell you that, our tax regimes and all of that, sometimes you have those with the wherewithal, supposing we have the wherewithal to pay more for those without it. But
going forward, we can't continue to be putting more on fuel, because when you do that, it trickles down. I mean, everybody will experience a bit of the hardship. Our policymakers must find, and I guess it's been overused, but innovative ways. You can't do the same things all the time, especially in these times when things are hard. There are people who had very good jobs. They'll be in that category of rich people pay for the poor, but they've lost their jobs. Some people have changed schools for their children because they can no longer afford the school fees. and now they are having to pay a lot more because they are still considered rich.
Page 23, I'll reserve that one, I'll come to it. SHS is inundated with protocol admissions exceeding vacancies.
Charlie.
Ghana.
Charlie.
Hey.
Charlie.
Protocol, you see what it is. Anyway, when you turn to the back page, Ghana Heart Initiative donates medical equipment to 44 hospitals. So that's it.
But listen, the thing about the protocol there, I also want to say something.
It's not that simple, Mama.
Sometimes
go there.
It is your perception. I have seen people, some student who did exceptionally well, maybe 7-1s, and they want to do science at Wesley Girls, and they don't get in. But somebody gets maybe, say, a 10, also chooses Wesley Girls, and say want to do home econs, and they get. But when they're telling the story, they would say, this person got 7-1s, didn't get through. This person got 10 and got through.
But they will not add that.
And somebody would think it's protocol, but it's not that simple because science is highly competitive in the school like that. So you almost must get a perfect score to be sure that you can get in. However, if somebody chose Wesley Girls as a first choice and got a grade a little less than yours because you wanted to do science, that person has a greater chance.
Yeah.
If it's, because those courses are not highly competitive.
What is your real feeling about this? Because back then, in the A-class schools, many people attended from, I'll start with my school, Bishop Herman, the likes of Mfantipim, St. Augustine's, Wesley Girls, Abri Girls, and the others. The competition, I remember during my time, it wasn't even about getting 6. It was about how many ones you had. And it was very stiff. Yeah. To the point where some of us wanted to read general arts, they wanted us to go and read general science. And that kind of, if you look at the setup now, where we're supposedly trying to say that, look, let's give others who may not necessarily qualify. And mind you, there are people in underprivileged communities who are studying with Bobo, while others are sitting in an AC and with lighting and everything. But is it really serving the purpose? Is it watering down the purpose? Some people are saying that no, now you are watering down maybe a gehe which is expected to provide this. You're watering down the standards. What do you think?
No, I don't think so. I beg to differ on this because I've seen people who, if we were paying and there was no computerized placement, they probably would be rejected because of where they're coming from. But we've seen people genuinely being posted to these schools, and it's made a lot of difference. Yeah. It's made a lot of difference. But listen, I just want to say, you went to an A school. I didn't go to an A school. Zion College is not an A school, and I'm proud to say that. Sometimes,
but look at
when you get a school,
look at you today.
You might think that because it's not Infantipim or Infantiman or Biherco or any of those known big ones, you would reject it and you will cry. But you can tell how well you can turn out great. I know a lot of people, amazing people who have come out of Zion College and other schools. Yeah. There are people who go to Odogon secondary school, who go to Methodist or any of Wesley Grammar, all of those schools that are not your A school, and they turn out fantastic. The school,
so given the opportunity, who knows what they could do?
It's a name, but the name doesn't make you. The name will not make you.
Yeah.
If you don't turn out great, the name doesn't.
Yeah.
You can have classmates and say, oh, I went to Presec, I went to Biherco, but I also have classmates, I went to Zion College. Yeah. Let's do the Daily Dispatch newspaper. Front page of the Daily Dispatch. Mini Congress to select 5 candidates. The Daily Dispatch, first of all, in Benefson's book, he talks about, he gives some of the names who will be contesting in the 2024. This is the intra-politics of the NPP, but they are saying that Dr. Friyi Akoto, the Minister for Agriculture, has confirmed a February 24, 2021 report in the Daily Dispatch that he intends to contest for the 2024 flag bearer slot of the New Patriotic Party. They're doing some analysis with all the names of the persons you see on the front page.
And it started,
There's also Ken Ejapon there.
Alan Chamating. Dr. Baumia, the Vice President, is there. Also, Friyi Akoto, Joe Gate, among others.
For those who have said that Mr. Joe Gate didn't get a government appointment, a ministerial position, because he had said to a radio station that he was interested in contesting. Now that the paper is reporting that Dr. Friyi Akoto has also confirmed, would that mean that the president's friend would be out?
No, but the point is, Efri Akoto is already in position now. Dogate hadn't sniffed the position yet, and he went on to say that. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about some schools, right? The paper is putting the spotlight on Presec, Wegehe, Motown, and Owas. You can check it out. Me, I'm not interested. If they were talking about Zion College, then yes. Nah.
Okay. Quickly to wrap with my headlines. The custodian, Kenneth Furiata, thanks God, Ghanaians for speedy recovery. WHO debunks AstraZeneca blood clot claims. And Akufo-Addo has genuine intentions for a Japa deal. Razak Kojo-Poku saying that a Japa deal. Anyway, Accra Times, Bagman tasks MPs not to be guard dogs of the president. But look at the caption. But Akufo-Addo begs him for support to deliver. And the Business and Financial Times, collective effort required to save economy from COVID-19 scourge. I agree, Mr. Finance Minister. He's still designated, right? Because he's not.
Yeah, he hasn't been vetted.
Vetting process. But Charlie, some of the things, well. So it is what it is. That's it with the headlines I have. And Mama, if I may just chip in from the Daily Graphics. So what they were saying, currently the heads and administrative staff of all the 16 SHSs on that story are busy with the admission process of enrolling students that have been admitted to the various schools. In all, a vacancy of 15,030 has been declared by the schools, with the Kumasi Anglican declaring the highest of 1,660. But it appears, as the story says, there's a lot of protocol going on. They are exceeding their vacancies, and it's becoming problematic. For instance, even though the Kumasi Technical Institute declared a vacancy of 816 for first years, as of March 9, a total of 940 students had completed their enrollment. Question is, what exactly is happening? If you have a copy of the Daily Graphic, you should dig into that story. It makes for interesting reading on page 23.
I know that the schools don't give exactly the number, the vacant positions. They reserve a bit. So I'm also thinking, but something that way. But that is not in the hands of GS, is it? That's portion that you reserve.
So it's the schools themselves, but at some point you have to get in to find out who is pulling which string.
Yeah. Okay. Well, our time is up. You can visit myjoyonline.com and explore a lot more stories there. There's this heartbreaking one, 9-year-old boy burnt to death as stepmother sets house ablaze. That's a very wicked stepmother indeed, because we know that there are some lovely stepfathers out there, but this one is certainly very wicked. It's a tragic story. You can read details of that on myjoyonline.com. It's a Wednesday. We've got AM Business, courtesy EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank. But first, we have to bring you sports.
Let's come back to Ghana, where Chief Executive Officer of Asante Kotoko Nana Amponta is confident that his team would win the 2020-2021 Ghana Premier League title. Speaking on our sister station at Dome TV's Fire for Fire program earlier yesterday, the 2019 GFA presidential candidate said the performance of the team away from the home shows, away from their home ground, shows that they are a better team and will end the season as champions.
Definitely a bit major league, As far as I'm concerned, where I see it, I see us doing that. Because the challenges are filming in our area. The challenges are film playing away from home. The entire first round, Ayabo, and going forward is going to continue for a while. You ball one match, what we call our home. Where the other team go through the same thing. Kim Pfizer, you see where they are. What do I say? You ball one, what if you away record?
Well, that was Chief Executive Officer of Asante Kotoko, Nana Yampont, and what he was saying was that Asante Kotoko have not had the opportunity to use their usual home ground, that's the Baba Yara Sports Stadium, because it's being renovated, and that's due to that they use the Accra Sports Stadium, and it's not something that they're used to. So you can see that a team like Ken Faisal, who also used the Baba Yara Sports Stadium, and now have to play at Techiman at Ohene Ameyao Park, are also struggling. So certainly there is justification for that, but he's confident that his team will still bounce back and win the Ghana Premier League title. Remember, after the first round, they are 4 points behind Kerala United, despite playing 1 game less. So we'll see how Asante Kotoko turn out in the second round of the Ghana Premier League. But still on Ghana Football, President of the Ghana Football Association, Keto Kreku, says their decision to partner with SWAG to build the capacity of journalists is not to gag the sports media. According to him, this is a move to help the FA promote their products properly.
Football Governing Body and the Sports Writers Association of Ghana reached an agreement to provide capacity building for members of the Inke fraternity. The event, which was held on Tuesday at the Accra Metropolitan Conference Room, was graced by various contributors in the football industry. President of the Ghana Football Association, Ket Okreku, told the media the decision of the GFA to partner SWAG in this program is to help the media enhance the products of the Football Association.
In any field or any industry you find yourself, you have to go for it. So we thought that having this engagement with the media obviously will add value to what we do at the FA, also add value to what the media does, and for which reason we never said no at the given opportunity. So this will be one of the many that we have on our agenda. The one for the Northern Zone will also happen soon, and then beyond that we'll continue to engage. We already know about the media press strategy by the Football Association, which we will continue to pursue. So it's very important for us to have the opportunity always to exchange ideas and to be together, because I say this all the time, that the media and football must always have what we call a sexy relationship.
Many have accused the GFA of constructive attempts to gag the media from criticizing their way of leadership and the management of football in the country. However, President of the Sports Writers Association of Ghana, Kwabena Yeboah, disagrees with those claims.
Let me put it on record that when my administration took over SWAG, if you remember candidly, I did indicate that we're not going to be defined by just honoring sportsmen and sportswomen, but to build the capacity of sports journalists. And we're doing this over the period. This is only to complement our efforts. And I'm just wondering how, in this day and age, the FA is capable of gagging the media. As sports journalists, once you lose your integrity, you are finished as journalists. And I don't think the FA can even succeed in doing that, even if that is the agenda. I don't think that is the agenda of the FA at all. The FA will set out to gag the media. It is absolutely impossible.
The GFA and SWAG would organize another capacity building for sports journalists in the northern part of the country in the coming days.
Now to community football, and Ajamani Kokpe have been crowned champions of the Magdan Ada Youth Gala after beating Tamatoku. The one-day tourney came off at the state-of-the-art La Town Park, and here's a report by Asari Bediako.
The one-day tournament saw 10 teams from Adan West and East taking part. Winners Azamani Kope, Goy, Sege, Toflokpo, Nakonkope represented Adan West, while Tamatuku, Kase, Adanfo, Adan and Big Adan represented Adan East. Azamani Kope earned a place in the finals after beating counterparts Goy, with Tamatuku beating Sege in the second semi-final. Tamatuku and Azamani Kope battled for the coveted trophy, and Azamani Kope emerged winners after an enthralling final. They took home a cash prize of 10,000 Ghana cedis, a trophy and medals, while first runners-up Tamatoku received 5,000 Ghana cedis. Former Black Stars captain Seven Apia, who graced the occasion, commended organizers of the Magdan Electrochem Adan Youth Tournament.
It's very, very important. Some of us, I think that standing here today, it was tournament like this. If I tell you my story, how I was discovered, you will be shocked. So I think it is very, very important. But just that we have to do more of this. that can help, our league and our national team in the future.
Dr. Daniel Macaulay, CEO of McDam Group, was the brain behind the one-day tournament.
Adan West and Adan East. And I felt they should have a feel of what AstroTurf is like. And they should be able to picture when we start the construction what is they are going to enjoy. So I decided to bring the whole Adan here, 10 teams. A lot of people don't know, but Adan is one place that will have a lot of football teams. The youth are a lot there. So I decided to bring them here to have the feel of the turf.
Well, that's how we wrap up the sport here. My name is Riku Ampofu. You can get some more sports stories on our social media handles at Joy Sports GH, or you can visit myjoyonline.com/sports to also get some more stories there. The AM show continues right after this break.
Well, thank you very much for staying with us on the AM show. Quite a lot to discuss this morning, and we're digging into the bit about Parliament and its relations with other arms of government, the executive and the judiciary, but in particular respect to some of the matters that have come up in recent times. Funding, one of them, the budget statement that is being discussed on the floor of Parliament. Now, joining us for the discussion, Richard Echampong, he's Member of Parliament for Bia East. He's also a member of the Finance Committee. He joins us. Then there's John Kuma, Member of Parliament for Ejiso, as well as, well, the man who maybe will be the intermediary, juggling matters on Parliament, and an analyst, Dr. Rashid Drummond, Executive Director, African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Gentlemen, a very good morning to you. Okay. Good morning. Great. So I would kindly ask that you unmute so we can hear from all of you. Let's try that one more time. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Hello. Good morning.
Right. So now that we have everybody on board, let me just welcome as well Honorable Echampong, who actually joins us in the studio. You also happen to be a member of the Finance Committee. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
Great. All right, so we dig into the matters, and we're going to start from the end of basically the processes that have been followed so far. The budget statement has been read, and I'll start with you, Honourable. The budget statement has been read per the Constitution, per the standing orders of Parliament. Following the reading of the budget, there are certain processes to be followed by both the minority and majority sides to come to some sort of agreement on what ought to be carried forward in terms of the economic or fiscal year. Just walk us briefly through what this process is, what we should expect to see in the coming days and maybe week.
Thank you very much, my brother, and a very good morning to your cherished viewers. It's been a while coming to the show.
I'm glad you're back.
That's correct. Normally when budget comes around, then we try to also show face and then discuss the contents of the budget because of the committee that we serve. As you rightly pointed out, Article 179 gives the authority to the President to cause any other minister to present to Parliament the estimates, the expenditure of the year. But election year, we don't present budget by the end of November. So we do what we call vote on an account. So we do appropriation for 3 months for the executive. And it will expire by the end of March 31st. That's why we delay in presenting this budget. So the Article 70 now will mandate the President to nominate any other person. But normally it's the Finance Minister who does that on behalf of the President. I know we passed the Public Financial Management Act, so Section 23(1) will say the Minister will present to Parliament the estimate of the year. But in that law, Minister is defined as the Minister responsible for finance.
But now that we don't have Minister of Finance, so if you look at this year's budget, they did not mention Section 23(1).
Yeah.
Because if they do that, then it will be a contravention of the law.
And your side of the minority raised this bit that in the past we've even had Haruna Idrisu and others have to play certain roles, but certain measures were put in place. That's when we had this caretaker minister.
But then we had not passed the PFMA.
Right.
You know, it was passed in 2016. And then if you look at our standing orders, order 140, 141, 142 is very clear on this matters. But we understand the situation we find ourselves. So we waive all those laws and all that because we are masters of our own rules, because we needed the budget to be presented to the House. So Chairman Sabonso did what is needful, and then he presented the budget. And after that, Friday, Saturday, up to Monday, there was a post-budget workshop for all members of Parliament. So experts were invited to take us through the rudiment of the budget, how to critique the budget, and all that. Some of us, this is my third term in the House, but I have new members. It doesn't matter your profession. Parliament is a very unique institution by itself. So members should be taken through the processes and all that. So we came back on Monday evening. Some came back yesterday, and then we started the debates on yesterday. So we started on the economic front. Yesterday, 7 members from each side debated the budget. Now we are looking at the principle and underpinning all those assumptions put forward by the executive. So this is where we are now. But a lot of talk is in town in respect of taxes, the newly introduced taxes that the government wants to put in place to recover the financial sector cleanup, the freebies they give to Ghanaian people, especially the lockdown areas and all that. So people are expressing their own feelings, but those in government are trying to push for it. But we are speaking for the ordinary man on the streets. But yesterday, something unique also came up.
Right.
With the presentation of Mr. Speaker. The executive is trying to use...
You mean with regard to the budget?
The budget.
Okay. So we shall get into some of those matters. I don't want us to put the cart before the horse. Okay. But these matters of the funding of the 3 arms of government what should really pertain, we'll get into. But before I move on to Honorable Kumar to find out what his thoughts are so far with regard to the process, I'd like to find out from you, how much of a concern is it for your end in Parliament, the Minority Caucus, when it comes to the absence of the finance minister designate? Because you have raised certain concerns with that. Now the budget has been put forward, and he is the person clothed with the power to actually respond to some of these issues that may come up. Today we've heard him saying, we must gear up to support government in terms of COVID-19 on the back of it and all of that. What is the urgency? What is the feeling on the minority side when it comes to that issue?
The absence of the finance minister has created some kind of vacuum, because we all know that the budget was not prepared by Chairman Sabonso. He just came and read the budget to all of us. There are certain issues that we want to raise, especially when it comes to the estimate. People must account to their stewardship. But the minister himself, who has been recycled, is not in place. So even if you put certain questions before the Chairman Sabonso, he can defer those questions. That let's wait until a substantive minister is appointed.
Is that going to affect the budget debate?
It is.
It's going to affect the budget debate.
It is. Like we say, we approved 10 billion from Bank of Ghana to finance the budget. They ended up spending 22 billion Ghana cedis. What accounted for all these things? Where is the minister to explain all these things to us? You projected that your revenue will be 55 billion and your expenditure will be 97 billion. But we ended up spending 100 billion Ghana cedis. What are the rationale behind all these things? What accounted for it? Chairman Sabonso cannot be in the better position to explain this. He has to go back, consult somebody, get some information. And dissemination of information comes with distortions and all that. And you can't even hold him responsible for what has happened, because he's just a caretaker minister. So that's our difficulty now. So we are praying that the finance minister, because we are told he's in good health, he will return home, get vetted. If he goes through the process, then we can hold him responsible for many of his decisions as to why we ended up with this deficit number 11% and all that. You can't hold any other person responsible. And the president himself will not come to the floor to answer these questions. Even if you want to file a question in respect of these numbers.
It must go through the finance minister.
You can't hold the governor before the plenary. He has no mandate. The finance minister will act on his behalf. Where is the finance minister to do this? And in the absence of the finance minister, you can't appoint a deputy finance minister. But what the constitution says, the substantive minister must be consulted before a deputy minister is appointed.
Okay. Honorable Kumar, I'll come to you shortly, but just again, coming back to you very briefly. So are you willing to put in place certain mechanisms to ensure that, are you willing to fast track, for example, the vetting process when it comes to the minister designate for finance to ensure that some of these questions can be answered? Because the process has started already in terms of analyzing the budget, debating its contents, and deciding what the way forward should be as a country. What is the positioning of the NDC on that? What are you willing, what concessions are you willing to make to ensure that the finance minister, as quickly as possible, can take office and respond to some of these?
The word should not be fast tracking, because either he will get approval or he will not get approval. It's not automatic that we are going to approve of him. So we are waiting for the man to appear before the committee. If he's rejected, another person is nominated, so that person becomes the substantive minister, and he will be clothed with the power to answer these questions.
Okay. Well, Honorable Kumar, this is what I'm going to do. Dr. Rashid is on a bit of a time leash this morning, so I'll just have you come in, Honorable Kumar, when it comes to what you can reflect on so far in terms of the process of analyzing the budget in Parliament, and then I'll quickly move on to Dr. Rashid Drummond. So, Honorable Kumar, let me give you that bite. So far, with regard to the debate on the floor of Parliament on the budget, what are your quick reactions? Honorable Kumar, can you hear me, sir? Okay. Unfortunately, technology playing some games with us. But let me quickly move on to Dr. Rashid Drummond and pose the same question to you. We have our budget statement that has been presented for the first time by a non-finance minister, substantive one. Your reflections so far on the process, the budget statement, its contents, and now that we're starting the debate. So let's start with that. Dr. Drummond.
Yeah, good morning to the viewers. Just to add that I'm a member of the Parliamentary Appointment Committee. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. It appears, Honorable Kumar. So, Honorable Kumar, let Dr. Drummond quickly react, and I'll come to you, sir. So, Dr. Drummond, please go ahead.
Yes, so thank you very much. I think what we have seen this year has not been different from what we witnessed over the many years past, except, of course, as you indicated, for the fact that we don't have the substantive minister showing up. And I believe this is, maybe one of the very few occasions where we've had such a situation. But we had, in his replacement, a very competent, person in the person of the leader of the House, the Honorable Osechi Mensah-Bosu. We've seen, following the presentation, of course, which I'm not an economist, but I leave that discussion about all the percentages and inflationary figures and deficits to the economists and to the members of Parliament to debate. We saw following the presentation, the post-budget workshop, which took place, leads to equip honorable members with the needed skills so that they can maybe properly scrutinize the budget and ask the right questions. By the way, just for the information of your viewers, this post-budget workshop is something that we instituted working with Parliament going back to about 20 years ago. And we are very pleased to at least know that now it's become part of Parliament's calendar, if you like. At least in the past, as soon as the budget is presented, the following day or week, they start the debate. And at that point, we thought that it was important, particularly given the composition of Parliament and given where members come from. Even if you are an expert in finance, sometimes you need to be guided when it comes to the budget. So I think overall the process has gone as has been the case over the last many years. Except, of course, this time around, I mean, we are hearing all the issues that are coming out of Parliament, particularly, the desire by the minority to have the minister who was given the resources to come before the House and answer the questions. I think that this is going to be one of the difficulties.
Do you feel that is a fair standpoint by the minority, requesting that the minister designate himself, be in position to, answer some of these questions, because he can. On the other hand, we know that he's been ill for a while. What do you make of that, suggestion that has been put forward?
To be very honest, as the honorable member in the studio has indicated, I mean, they cannot be asking Honorable Chairman Zabuns to answer these questions, because he would easily say, I mean, I didn't execute the budget. The person who executed the budget is the one who is in a better position to answer the questions. And it could be that, yes, there is a deficit, or he has gone beyond, what was requested, and so on. But there are probably very, plausible explanations to that would be accepted by the House. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about sharing information. It's about being transparent in terms of how our resources have been used. And I think that is a fair question to ask. And it is going to be a question that perhaps only the minister himself can answer. I mean, unfortunately, because we don't have, he hasn't been vetted yet and appointed, and there's no substantive deputy minister. But I think maybe in the worst case scenario, those who executed the budget with him are still there. I mean, we have the previous deputy ministers. I believe some of them are in Parliament. I mean, they might be in a better position to answer the questions than perhaps putting Honorable Chairman in that uncomfortable situation.
Does the law, do the standing orders of Parliament, allow for that in this peculiar situation we find ourselves, for the deputies to actually step in, as they have been a part of this process, to answer those critical questions?
No, I think like the honorable member in the studio has said, they are the masters of their own rules. I mean, already I think a lot of the rules have been sidestepped in order to get this process going, and in order not to have our country in a situation of where the executive doesn't have resources to run the affairs of the country. So I think whatever the rules are, I believe if they are all minded and the two sides agree, they can always find solutions that are workable. I mean, at the end of the day, the standing orders are perhaps orders that have been designed by Parliament itself, and they can always I think I can't remember the exact numbers in the book, but I think there are instances where the standing orders can be suspended to allow for certain processes to go on. I mean, if you allow me, I don't know how much, because I don't have very much time. I was hoping that maybe the main issue has to do with the tussle now between the executive and the legislature, as well as the judiciary being dragged in terms of resources, and
that is something, Dr. Drummond, that we're going to address shortly. I'll just give the opportunity to Honorable Kumar to also deliver his initial reactions to the process so far, and then I shall come to you. But on the back of what you said, I guess a bit of biblical analogy there, the Sabbath being made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So you could say in Parliament as well, the standing orders were made for Parliament, not Parliament for the standing orders. And they could decide what the way could be in this peculiar circumstance. But let me come to Honorable Kumar, Member of Parliament for Ejisu and member of the Appointments Committee as well. Thank you so much for staying with us. What would be your initial reaction so far budget statement presented by Oseiche Mensah Bonsu, the majority leader, and now with the process initiated in terms of analyzing the details. What is your reflection on day one so far, Honorable Kumar?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share my views on this matter. I think that it's been a process well managed so far. We must always remember that the budget is the budget of His Excellency the President, and the minister presents it for and on behalf of His Excellency the President. So to deliver their
It's unfortunate. It appears the connection of the Honourable Member of Parliament for Ejisu has not been very good this morning. Honourable Kumar, can you hear me? Okay, so we might have to move on and come back to him. We might have to move on and come back to Honourable Kumar on that beat. But this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come back to you, Dr.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Honorable Kumar, so you can go on with your submission if the connection is better now. Yes.
I'm saying that the fact that Honorable Chairman presented it didn't really take anything as far as the law is concerned, because whichever minister did the presentation will do so for and on behalf of His Excellency the President. And the question of certain key questions not being able to be answered. We already have two of his able special advisors. I mean, two former deputy ministers of finance who are also members of parliament. We have Honorable Abner from Super East and Honorable Kwekukwa.
Okay, so Honorable Kumar, this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to remedy the connection, work on it a bit. Our technical team is working on that so that we can hear you better, because the points you're making are important. We want to get them. But let me come to Dr. Drummond. And Honorable Champon, I'll crave your indulgence on this because Dr. Drummond has to take leave of us at some point. You had wanted to dig into the matter of the budget for the three arms of government, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. And we know the Honorable Speaker of Parliament has actually rejected any cuts to the budgets of, the legislative body, Parliament, and the judiciary. Puts both of them together about 119 million for Parliament, that less what they are going to get, and then the judiciary by about 77 million. You're looking at close to 200 million being shaved off. Mr. President says it's on the back of COVID-19. We need to tighten our belts as a country. But as far as we know, this is supposed to be a counterbalancing system, and Parliament is rejecting it. What's your take?
Well, I think my take on this is that yes, we might have to be mindful of the impact of COVID-19 on the economy of our nation, as well as perhaps the global economy. But over the years, I've been watching our Parliament very closely since the second Parliament. So that's about more than 20 years now. Over the years, I don't know, perhaps somebody might have to tell me, across all the different governments that we've had, I haven't seen a situation where Parliament got exactly what it wanted in terms of budgetary allocation. And what this has done is that it has just reinforced the skewed relationship between the executive and the legislature, to the extent that the legislature over the years, and I'm not talking about this eighth Parliament, over the years has been in a situation where usually, committees go cup in hand to the various government departments that they are supposed to oversee. And these departments are the ones that usually fund them, except maybe in instances when perhaps groups like us and other, partners of Parliament have some projects that support Parliament, then they are taken out and supported to do their oversight work. Honorable Babin, the Right Honorable Speaker, has been part of this, and I think that he's been waiting for an opportunity to correct this this challenge. And I think, I mean, my take on this is that I hope, you know, the two sides in Parliament will see this not an issue of NDC MPP, but an issue of the legislature versus the executive. Because already we have a very serious information asymmetry that exists between the executive and the legislature. You see the minister, as he rightly, Honorable Kuma hinted, with a coterie of assistants, technical people, and so on. Then you go to Parliament, committees sometimes have very serious challenges of, I mean, attracting qualified technical people who can help them, you know, match the executive in terms of the analysis that is needed, the scrutiny that is needed to do their work. And this takes resources. And a Parliament that cannot determine its own budget, a Parliament that cannot have the resources that it needs for it to function both administratively and then also execute the constitutionally mandated functions of oversight, lawmaking, and representation. I think it's a Parliament that that certainly will be found wanting when an assessment is done in terms of how it executes its mandate.
Are you suggesting, Dr. Drummond, that if these cuts are to move on, if they are applied to Parliament, Parliament is going to be less effective, less efficient on account of that Parliament is going to suffer because of these cuts?
Oh, it goes without saying. I think that is very, very clear, because at the end of the day, I mean, they have statutory obligations. I mean, first, so some of the resources will go into that. And then beyond that, you know, once all that is done, the key engine of Parliament, which is, I mean, the committee I mean, the various committees that are supposed to do the oversight work, usually do not have all the resources that they need, you know, and this is where, you know, the emphasis has to be. So, I mean, if we have these huge cuts, I understand there is COVID, yes, but at the end of the day, we also need a body that can give us an assurance as a nation, some kind of insurance policy that those who are given the resources to execute and to discharge, you know, the plans of the executive, the plans, I mean, in the manifesto of the government and so on. I mean, those people can be held to account and held to, I mean, be held to account in a very efficient manner. And this will require resources. I mean, why? I mean, as the Right Honourable Speaker said, it is not for the executive to say this is what we are going to give Parliament, and then the executive would determine its own budget. I think, I mean, we need to have a very serious conversation as a country. I mean, over the years, a lot of wrongs have been done to the extent that, you know, it has made our Parliament not quite efficient when it comes particularly to issues of oversight. I mean, some years ago, we did a study and we looked at our Parliament and other parliaments across the continent. You know, the Kenyans, the Ugandans did quite well because they have laws that safeguard Parliament, particularly when it comes to these issues of financial independence. I mean, we don't have that. We don't have a budget law. I mean, we don't have a parliamentary budget office yet, and so on. And all these take resources. And I think I hope our leaders in Parliament will be minded about this and think more about the legislature as an institution rather than maybe a battle between NDC and MPP.
Okay.
And so on.
Let's talk about constitutional requirements, why we may not have specific laws when it comes to budgeting critically, as you put it. At least the Speaker of Parliament has brought to the fore some matters, and I'm just going to raise them so you find out whether the executive is overstepping its bounds or maybe even impinging on the law. And this is what the Speaker of Parliament, to quote him, has said. What the Constitution has done is for the executive to make recommendations and to negotiate during the deliberations of the budget before the House. I note, however, that in the budget statement and the expenditure estimates laid on Friday, March 12, 2021, the recommendation of the president were laid instead of the original estimates that were submitted by Parliament and the judiciary. It is not for the executive to impose ceilings on the judiciary or Parliament, and we have to ensure the proper things must be done. So, constitutionally, per the requirements we have, is the executive at this point in time doing anything that is over and above what it ought to be doing?
I think I'll leave that to the constitutional lawyers to provide this answer. I think I can just give a simple, layman, somebody watching Parliament's answer, and that I think, if I look at it on the face of it, I think the executive must have to come back again and maybe try and do something different. I know, as I said right from the beginning, there is COVID. COVID has impacted on our economy just like the economies of other nations. Okay. At the end of the day, Parliament might not get all that it is asking for, but I think there has to be some kind of negotiation. Maybe Parliament might have to soften its stance a little bit and come to the middle, but the executive would also have to make sure that at least if Parliament doesn't get the full cap, at least some kind of negotiation should produce some adequate resources that would not leave Parliament in a situation where it just sits down and cannot do anything when it comes to some of the important roles that it has to play. I think that this is not too much to ask for, and we want to get to a point where our Parliament is not just simply a budget approving Parliament and simply just takes whatever comes before it and says, yes, this is approved. No, I think we have to get to a point where, just like what we see in many countries, some negotiations, if you don't give us this, as an institution, I think we are not going to approve this budget, because sometimes, for some of us, people ask us a question: if Parliament doesn't have the resources, is it not the same body that approves the budget? Then you are stuck. You are stuck. You don't have an answer. Over the years, I know the position of Honorable Chairman Saboso. I know the position of the Minority Leader. I know the position of the Right Honorable Speaker, because we've worked with them. They've been in a position in power over the years, and we've heard them lament about the challenges that Parliament faces as an institution. This is the time, I think, to reset the relationship, and I think everybody should support the Right Honorable Speaker. Not to wreck the nation's coffers,
right?
But to make sure that at least if we can't get the right thing done completely, at least some effort must begin, and the time is now.
Okay, right before you take leave of us, let me just also mention that we still have Honorable Champon in the studio, Member of Parliament for Bia East, and he also is here with us. He's a member of the Finance Committee. We also have Honorable Kuma, Member of Parliament for Ejisu, and Vice Chairman, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Dr. Drummond, in less than a minute, I just want you to address this because you have to go. I want you to address this question. Do you feel we are here where we find ourselves now because we have this peculiar setup where we have a minority member becoming the Speaker of Parliament, and so this is exposing some of the problems we have in the system? Do you feel it is because we have Alban Sumana Bagbin, Right Honourable, in that position as Speaker? That is why these things are coming up.
Yes, I think that might be one part of the explanation.
Okay.
Because, you see, in the 6th Parliament, I remember very well, the Right Honourable Duajahu made a very clear statement in the House saying that, look, the practice where, government departments fund committees to go and do oversight must stop. And we have to have enough adequate resources. He was Speaker at the time, and his party was in power. That couldn't happen. I don't know what the explanation is. And perhaps if maybe the same situation had repeated itself, maybe we wouldn't be seeing this playing out the way it is playing out now. this is maybe what we need as a country. I mean, NDC, MPP in power. At the end of the day, I think it's about you and I. It's about our children. It's about the future of our country. And I think that is more important than any party politics. I mean, at this time in our history.
Dr. Drummond, thank you very much for your time with us this morning. Executive Director, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. It's been insightful sharing your thoughts on the show. But as indicated, we also have joining us via phone Honorable Kuma. Honorable Kuma, thank you so much for your patience with us. Honorable.
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Great. Thank you for staying with us. So you were delivering your submission on the process so far. Maybe if you could quickly round up on that. I don't want to stymie that train of thought. So if you could wrap up on that so we move on to other matters.
Sure. All that I was saying was that whoever does the presentation of the budget will do it for and on behalf of His Excellency the President. In fact, in other jurisdictions, the President himself comes to lay the budget statement before Parliament. It's not in all cases that the Minister of Finance has to do it. In the UK, sometimes the Prime Minister will do it, not even the Secretary for Exchequer or the Secretary of Finance. So sometimes even in Nigeria, you have instances where Buhari himself has laid his budget before the Nigeria Parliament. So some of these things sometimes happen, but of course, His Excellency the President can decide per our laws to nominate one of his cabinet ministers to do it on his behalf. So the difficulty where others think that some questions cannot be answered, especially in this particular instance. We have two special advisors of the Minister Designated for Finance, who were also former Deputy Ministers of Finance, Honorable Akina and Honorable Kweku Kwatin, who are both members of Parliament, and yesterday also joined the debate to answer to some of the questions that were by members of the other side. I think that obviously this is not the ideal situation we all wanted. We wanted to see a healthy finance minister doing his job. So I don't think we should overstate it. Whatever has happened as far as law is concerned is within the remit of the rules of Parliament and within the Constitution of our country.
Okay, so before we move on to talk real money matters and taxes and levies and what has been levied on what, NHIL, ESLA, fuel prices and all of that. Before we get into that, we've already started the discussion on capping, so to speak, what amounts Parliament gets, the judiciary gets. So let's continue the conversation from there. Now, two takeaways from what Dr. Drummond said. He insists that he thinks one of the causes of where we are now, because it's not a novelty that Parliament puts forward a budget and does not get everything it has, asked for. One of the reasons is the fact that we have a Speaker of Parliament who is from the minority side. He has also suggested that we might, on the part of the executive, you might want to take a different approach to this situation of tightening the belts of the legislature and the executive. How do you react to Dr. Drummond's comments?
Yes, I think it's a good point that Dr. Drummond made. It is important to recognize that the budgetary estimates that are submitted by the judiciary and the legislature are not supposed to be changed. I mean, if you look at the rules. But the same Parliament also enacted laws last year on the ability of the government to the Minister of Finance to cap and put a certain ceiling on all budgetary allocations, especially on statutory funds. So I think it brings to fore the need to talk, to negotiate on both sides, so that at the end of the day, we can have a compromise situation where the exchequer is not overburdened, the finance minister's resources is not overburdened, whilst at the same time not crippling the ability of Parliament and the judiciary to also deliver on their mandate.
If the route of negotiation is what you know you should have taken from the start, why this seeming imposition, which has got the Speaker reacting in this forceful manner?
Yes, this budget is the procedure of the budget presentation, because the Speaker will not even know how their submitted estimates to be treated until the budget is read. I'm sure that's the reason why it's already in the public domain and how things are being discussed. But in the end, I believe that it will be resolved. There's a procedure where some of these things can be discussed and resolved. And I think as it's been raised in Parliament, the executive will be notified of it and the necessary steps will be taken.
On the angle of whether some of these things are surfacing because we have a speaker from the other side, so to speak, what do you think?
Obviously, before, if you have the speaker coming from the same government, sometimes they tend to appreciate the difficulty of the executive in most cases, so will not press more than would have been the case. In this instance, you have the speaker who is not coming from the same party of the government. So you should expect that certain negotiation demands will be more firm and stern than if it was coming from the same party with the government, because it is obvious that both sides have problems. The legislature will need and the judiciary would need these funds to be able to execute or carry out their programs effectively. But at the same time, government is also hard pressed for resources. We know the levels of debt. We know the commitments of government from interest payments and several other demands. They need to construct infrastructure and a whole lot of demands on government. So some of these interplay of important demands on government will force the government to sometimes ask for certain leverage, but that will not be, easily accepted under this kind of situation. So I believe with further discussions, we'll be able to resolve so that we can come to a middle point to get to a situation where we are able to provide enough resources to the judiciary, the legislature, and at the same time, we make it possible for government to also meet other obligations.
Okay, let me come into the studio now, and we have Honorable Champon still here with us. You've been very patient. Thank you very much for your time. But this is your bite. You get also to dig into all of these matters that we've been discussing. But key takeaways so far. Dr. Drummond says, yes, it's because we have a Speaker of Parliament from the other side. That is why we are facing some of these. That was just corroborated by Honorable Kuma as well, who thinks it is that. In fact, he adds that maybe the Speaker might not appreciate where government is. And for that reason, we are where we are. Are we merely playing politics with this?
I don't see it to be in that light that we are playing politics with it. But like Dr. Damani said, this is the right time for Parliament to also exert its authority. Because we've been preaching this over and over, that there should be a decoupling of the legislature from the executive. But who will take the bull by the horn? We have a member of Parliament who is a cabinet minister. He goes to cabinet to take a decision. That same person comes to Parliament to debate the same policy. So in this case, he will speak for the executive.
So there's a conflict in there.
Serious conflict. And every member of the ruling government wants to be appointed by the executive. So they are doing the bidding of the executive. So you don't see clearly the function of the legislature. We are in charge of the approval of the budget. But whatever is submitted by Parliament, somebody sits somewhere and take a decision as to how to be allocated to the executive.
And that somebody sitting somewhere is the executive.
The executive. And in terms of the judiciary, the law is very clear. Article 1793 says whatever estimate presented by the Chief Justice in consultation with the Judicial Council is not subject to revision. The law is very clear. And they can also put up unnecessary numbers that because the law gives us this room to operate, we are going to overburden the budget. No. They put up an estimate, and you know that they have other commitments, so that let's give them this money so that they can also exert their independence as judiciary or as legislature. But you bring your budget to me, and a government machinery, you have your own ceiling, you give your own allocation. That one, you expect me to give you 100% approval. But what I submitted to you, you give me a cut, saying because of COVID, because what is coming to the kitty cannot take care of all your expectations. Why are you spending so much by denying other arm of government what is due that other government institution? We have oversight responsibility over the executive. How can we perform our function? Sometimes NGOs come to support Parliament to do all this work, and it doesn't sit well with Parliament. So the point is, by the end of the day, if this NGO has no resources to support Parliament to do the oversight work, how can Parliament even check what the executive is doing?
So, per what Dr. Drummond said, you also wholly agree that it will get Parliament wobbling, maybe on one leg. It will hamper the activities of Parliament if these cuts are brought to bear.
So, like my colleague John Kumar said, there should be a middle ground, that at least it should be a win-win situation. Because in budget cycle, it's two things. Appropriation different from leases. You can be given 1 billion Ghana as an allocation. By the end of the day, leases may be, let's say, 40 or 50%. So if you present, let's say, 200 million Ghana cedis, and it's cut to, let's say, 100 Ghana cedis, you are not going to get the entire 100 million Ghana cedis by the end of the year, because we have 9 months to go. So if you reduce it, we are going to, in terms of leases, I'm not going to get 100%. So just peg it at the 200 million that I requested. So even if you lease 150 million, at least I can also get some resources to run the institution of Parliament. Because we have right now we set up a lot of institutions within Parliament, which we need to employ professionals to come and man those institutions in Parliament for the good of all of us. We need to strengthen the legislature so that we can also perform our oversight responsibilities. Okay. This has nothing to do with compensation. It has nothing to do with benefit to members of Parliament. This is an institution of Parliament. So people should not take it that members are demanding so much. No, this has nothing to do with members of Parliament. They are requesting these resources to run Parliament as an institution.
Right.
Look at, because of COVID, sometimes during a state function, we don't sit in the chamber. We move to the tent, State of Nation address, budget presentation, and all that. You know, we pay for it. It's private developer who put up the tent.
So you're making reference to what we saw this year, for example?
Yes.
We had to.
Anytime we move to the tent, we pay for it. So all this has become an additional cost to Parliament.
But is Parliament not being too plaintive? We have the judiciary, the judicial service. They've also got a slash. They are not complaining.
They don't have...
You seem to be complaining on their behalf. They are not complaining.
Because they don't have the platform. We have the platform. Because they don't give approval to the budget. We do. So they presented the budget to us. We are going to approve that of the executive. So if you don't give what is due mean, it becomes difficult for Parliament to also take a decision on yours. Do you understand?
Is there going to be tit for tat? Is it to say that if the executive sticks to what it's proposing, you are also going to cut down on allocations for the executive?
We cannot increase the ceiling, but we can, sometimes at the committee level, we reduce certain numbers.
Is that going to happen? Is that going to be considered?
We look at the total envelope. We look at the total project. Sometimes we can tell that these projections are so ambitious, you can't achieve them. Like in this budget, they are proposing to raise 72 billion revenue. That's against 113 billion expenditure. The gap is 41 billion. So you ask yourself, what was the performance for 2020 in terms of revenue generation? About 55 billion. So the question is, in the midst of COVID, many institutions, many organizations cannot even make break even. Are you sure you can rake in this 72 billion, if the answer is no, then the expenditure of 113 billion is very serious.
Right.
They understand it?
Right.
And even the deficit numbers, can't you reduce it from 11% to, let's say, 10%? So if you want to reduce it, you have to cut costs. So you look at the areas. Like in this budget, they are allocating 200 million Ghana cedis to NIA. Already we've spent close to about 1.1 billion.
Of course, the Ghana card registration and all of that factoring in there.
So you ask yourself, okay, what are you going to use the 200 million for? Can we reduce it to 100 million? Free SHS, 1.975 billion allocation. Because of its education, let's maintain that one. Look at other sector. Maslow, 48 million. The point is, have you been able to recover the loans that you gave the previous years? If no, strengthen your recovery process, recover many of the facilities. Let's take the 48 million and use it for other purposes. Because you're giving loans, go and recover the loans so that we can get the money and we reimburse the state, or you give back the loan to other institutions.
So these are mechanisms the executive can use rather than maybe burden your August House.
When they bring the estimate, we discuss all these things with them, and sometimes they take those advices, but it doesn't come to the public domain for people to see what happened. What people get to hear of it is what we discuss at the plenary. But committee issues, many of them, you don't get to see those things.
But just to clarify, Parliament is open to negotiating on these matters.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Let me go over the phone lines now and interact further with Honorable Kuma, who actually is Vice Chairman, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee. Now, I would like to start the conversation in terms of, move it forward a bit in terms of the impositions of taxes and levies from your end. NHIL affected, 5% before profit on the banks. There are so many that you've introduced. Even the fuel prices are going to be affected. That is going to affect fares as well. It appears to hit every Ghanaian from all angles. Now, some economists had said that we didn't need new taxes. How did we find ourselves here? How relevant, for example, is a sanitation and pollution tax when we all know that in the system we have very little to show in that end of things? Honorable Kumar.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I'll come to the taxes, but just to make a point briefly about the argument on decoupling the executive from the legislature and ensuring strict compliance to separation of powers. I think we have made this argument over the years since our independence time till now. And I think we should be very careful how we kind of always create an impression that it is not good to have ministers become MPs becoming members of the executive.
Don't you see that conflict in there?
Well, we have been there before. If you look at the First Republic and the Second Republic, we were having strict members of parliament becoming the executive. I mean, if you were not an MP, you could not be appointed as ministers. The First and the Second Republic. Then in the Third Republic, we said, let's go strictly separation of powers under Liman. And you remember what happened? The budget was even thrown away. There was no coordination between the executive and the legislature, and the government almost came crashing down. This is what informed the Fourth Republic in 1992, that in the Constitution, we said that we must have a blend of the executive and the legislature working together, because when we say separation of powers, it's like a car. You need both the tires, the engines, the seats, the steering wheel, all must work together at the same time for the car to run properly. So if you keep pushing arguments that decouple, it has its own difficulty and consequences on the country, and we should be careful how we do that. I think that we can resolve these matters when we talk and explain the situation and circumstances. Like the Honorable Richard rightly stated, there are new parliamentary programs and projects that require extra attention from the government in terms of funding. So if we can make this clear to the executive and show them why they must increase the funding and not put any seal on it, the executive is reasonable. We have the same people. I think when we are able to explain the circumstances why we should not put any capping or seal on the legislature and the judiciary, and we make the case forcefully, everybody is reasonable and we can accept it so that we work with it.
Okay.
So now back on the taxes. Obviously, I mean, nobody is happy with increasing taxes in our country. And remember, in 2017, this same government preached that we have to do away with nuisance taxes. And about 17 different taxes and levies were actually repealed and scrapped from our laws. So it's not like this government takes delight in introducing taxes in this country.
But while you've taken away some taxes, I mean, there was a point when we had a luxury tax, the people complained and you took it away. But it appears each time we take away, we find another end, a back end of adding new taxes, new levies, like the sanitation and, pollution levy that we've now added. 1% here, 1% there. It adds up to the burden of the ordinary Ghanaian, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So that is what we call, what we scrapped was what we call the nuisance taxes. There are certain taxes when you introduce, if you look at the earnings, the revenues you are receiving compared to the cost to the people, the burden you are giving them and the impact on businesses, you realize that you are actually going into negative. So that is what we call the nuisance taxes. But if you look at the current revenue frame, Honorable rightly put it there. If you look at the revenue expectation, we are talking about 72 billion, when last year we did 55 billion. The gap requires certain means by which government have to raise money to bridge that gap. And the options are there. Are we to borrow to fill that gap, or you can raise reasonable levels of taxes in order to fill the gap? When you borrow, you are only postponing the repayment from the people. At the end of the day, it is still going to add up to our repayment rate and our interest repayments, among several other consequences on our finances. So it will still come back to increasing the public debt. And we know, even at 297 billion, we are complaining that 76% on our GDP is already too high, and we have to do something about it. So the options are two. Either we'll continue to borrow to increase the percentage of GDP on our public debt to maybe 85%, or we introduce some of these taxes, and these are, I believe, well worked out levels of tax that will not, even though no tax will come without a burden, these are reasonable burdens that I think the Ghanaian populace will be willing to take up. So as you address this point, let me just take you back. Your administration said we had the resources, that we didn't need to borrow so much, that we actually were sitting on the resources we could use to achieve some of these very things that you are talking to all of Ghana about. How come we now have to rely on borrowing or taxing the ordinary Ghanaian again? Is that not contrary to what we were told? No, it is not contrary. And like what we said, borrowing or taxing is part of the resources that we have. We have never said anywhere that it is not good to borrow, but we have questioned the use of the borrowing whenever you take it. It must be used for productive causes so that you are able to repay. We have never said that don't tax the people. We never made that argument. But we said don't give nuisance taxes. Taxes that tend to have, taxes on condoms and cutlasses, and taxes on there were certain level of taxes that were introduced in this country that you could call nuisance taxes. And like I said, the benefits and revenues that we generated from those taxes compared to the consequences and burden on businesses, it far outweighed it. But if you compare, even the midst of these few taxations that we have introduced, remember we have also introduced about 30% tax credit to a certain level of categories of workers, like the transport unions, the hotels, and several other people that we think they will need such support to do well in this corporate. Remember, every country in the world at the moment, as we speak, have to increase their public debt because of COVID. U.S. alone, they just approved $1.9 trillion to support the economy. And these are debts which has to be repaid in future. So in our country, there was a time when His Excellency needed to provide hot meals for the people. We needed to provide water for free, electricity for free. in the difficult periods of the COVID when it was at its peak. All these things were done without having to burden the people. But as we are gradually coming out of the COVID situation, and of course we are all looking forward to a positive outlook for this 2021 financial year, we think that it's about time we gradually recover some of these costs and debts that we have brought upon our public purse.
Okay.
And like I said, the only way to go about it is either you borrow to break the gap of the deficit you have, or you introduce certain minimal, reasonable levels of tax so that you are able to increase your revenues and meet the public obligations and commitments that we have as a government. And that's exactly what we are doing.
Honorable Kumar, I would have to...
To be fair, I mean, if you look at previous introduction of taxes, especially under the NDC, when they introduced ESLA and those difficult taxes, it was at a rate of 27%. And they make a good case that we should bite the bullet. So if we introduce 5% and 1% and 2%, look, we have all praised the government vision to have the cleanest city in Accra, as a vision. How do we achieve that?
Okay.
Looking at the
Honorable Kumar, let me come into the studio now.
That we have in this country.
Right. Let me come into the studio now and engage Honorable Champon, and you will have the last bite of this bullet, so to speak. He's mentioned, for example, ESLA, 27%. Interestingly, we keep increasing. VAT, for example, has gone up by another percentage point. I listened to Dr. Clement Apak in recent times saying that this is a very insensitive budget that has been put forward. Is that the thinking of the NDC, and how do you react to all these additions that have been brought to bear?
You see, politicians, we have to employ principle in whatever we do. Because all the taxes that he mentioned, when they were in opposition, they described them as nuisance taxes. But when they came to power, even with the energy sector levy, they keep increasing extra. Even with these new taxes, they are going to increase extra, but on 2 or 3 occasions. And then if you can mention about 17 taxes, you ask yourself, what is the incidence of those taxes? The effect on the ordinary Ghanaian in terms of how much each one is going to pay. Look at the financial sector cleanup tax of 5%. Already they are paying the fiscal stabilization levy of 5%. And they're going to add another 5% to make it 10% on their gross profit. This is not after tax, this is after profit, before profit. So you ask yourself, who is going to bear the burden? They will push on this cost to the customers. So you and I is going to pay. Cost of doing business is going to go up, yes. Right now, they've increased 1% flat rate. Already, they introduced 3% flat rate, VAT flat rate. So it brings in the cascading effect. So it becomes tax on tax. Computation of it is very difficult. People can't do the input and output analysis. So by the end of the day, they sit at their own comfort zone and do the application. So it's going to trigger inflation. Right now, we are complaining the inflation is 10.4%. We are going to witness a hike in inflation. And they said either we borrow or we tax the people. Still, we are going to borrow. Because in the 2021 budget, we are projecting to pay an interest of 35 billion as against 24 billion. So we are going to borrow and we are going to tax the people. So the people are going to pay tax, and the loans that we are going to contract, the same people are going to pay for it.
So in the end, just to wrap up, is the NDC, your side, are you going to reject this budget as long as these are maintained? Because some of your members have said that this is very insensitive. We shouldn't go with this.
The sanitation tax and all that, we can introduce the polluter pay principle. Because
the what principle? Polluter
pay principle. If you pollute the environment, you have to pay for it. Some communities, there's no landfill site. So why are you saying people are going to pollute the environment and somebody should go and pay for it? Open defecation. If it is in Accra or in Kumasi, and somebody is in my village and is not engaging in this, why do you expect somebody to pay for the sins of others?
Well, the conversation continues. Very interesting matters we've had to dig into this.
We are going to resist many of the taxes. They are going to bring the tax bills. No, we have to be sensitive to the price of people because many people, their disposable income has already reduced. So we cannot overburden them.
Member of Parliament for Bia East, the Honourable Richard Achampong, saying we have to be sensitive to the plight of the people. Thank you very much, Honourable, for joining the conversation. Member of Parliament for Ejisu as well, and Vice Chairman, Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament, Honourable John Kuma, joining the conversation as well. Earlier, we had Dr. Rashid Drummond, Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. To all of you, Honourable Kuma, I know you're still on the line. Thank you so much, and the conversation does continue. But coming up next on the AM show, all these matters, some of them that we've been discussing, we hit the newsstands. My colleague Manuel Ranting did that to find out what people like you think about them. That is up next on the AM show. Do stay.
Great, so it's Wednesday, 17th of March 2020, and really the newspaper stands are, filled with a lot of stories. I mean, from the tragic Apam incident where 13 children drowned, to issues happening in Parliament. We've heard the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbin, say that he's not going to, in fact, he's going to block the approval of the 2021 budget if the executive tries to cut some of the budget of the Parliament and then also of the judiciary. A few of the people who are here to read the things. My boss, we can just take quick reaction. So this one is talking about Bagbin. The Accra Times says Bagbin tax MPs not to be guards of the president, but Akufo-Addo begs him to support. Apam buries 13 drowned kids.
Minister rescues land commission boss. This issue of land sale in Accra, in fact, gun lands and the sale of gun lands has become an issue. It's been years back, people have issues with the sale of gun lands. And those that has been transferred into the hands of the government has not been streamlined with the various rules guarding the principles of turning lands from stool lands to government. And when they are reverting it as a result of government not having any good use for the land, it has become a very big problem that is facing the guns. And I believe that with Abu in office, if he's going to make any strides in his office to become a hallmark for him himself, I would advise him to go back and sit down with the Ghana traditional office, the council, and sit down with them, and they come out, draw a modality, a plan, a roadmap that will lead them in the sale of lands to individuals and the apportionment of lands to the government. And when government have no use, the modality in place that will make them revert the land back to the stool. Okay. And this can bring sanity in our areas of these land guards and other things, just bringing everything to...
Great, hold on for me. I want to speak to this man who is just joining us. Great, so you're here looking at the headlines. Which one of them is interesting you? Which one of the headlines is interesting you?
The Statesman.
The Statesman, okay, what does the Statesman say?
The future is bright. Government has shown the effective post-COVID recovery measures.
Okay, so, I mean, we've seen that the government has introduced new taxes as a way of quickening the post-COVID recovery process. I mean, when you look at those things, as a Ghanaian, how does it make you feel?
I feel it will help because when the COVID came to Ghana, our land, Ghana here, the government has spent much about it. He gave water free, electricity free, and also buy some PPEC for the medical doctors and the nurses and this thing. So, and also supported the micro people, finance people, and all of that. So right now, we want the COVID to go, and you need money to support so that we can create the COVID. If not, we can minimize it down for us to get free to go all about our so that the economy will go back.
So you think that it's okay for everybody to contribute something small?
It's
It's okay for everybody to contribute something small so that we recover quickly.
Okay, it's not okay for anybody. But those who can afford should try and do. But those who cannot afford it, but one thing I will say that the government should come back and see to it, come back and see to it that maybe so to tell the people that to see that those who can afford, maybe the big companies and the big business entrepreneurs and this thing, to buy those microfinance and the vulnerable people, is exempt them from.
You should exempt them, and you've heard him make a point that. Those who earn more, in fact, the big income earners should pay more and contribute to the recovery process. Well, he's saying that it's okay for people who have enough to contribute. You agree? You can come closer. You agree?
Well, as much as I agree with him, there's a lot to it than we all see, and it's about time we look at it holistically, and that's what I can say about it.
It's about time we look at it. When you say holistically, what do you mean?
That we bring all stakeholders on board and discuss it dispassionately, and then we can find amicable solutions to it.
Well, we know that budget, which introduced the taxes and so on and so forth, that will essentially put us on a path to recovery, is being threatened of a block in Parliament. The Speaker says that if you cut down the budgetary allocation to the legislature and the judiciary, he's not going to allow it to pass through. And in fact, the Accra Times is saying begging tax MPs not to be guard dogs of the president. And that's essentially what we are dealing with. You think that is going to go through?
Yes, because now we have an even parliament, and this will bring out the main agenda of parliament to bear, so that everybody will come out to be plain and be fair in the discussion. This will not have to do with political imbalance. This will come as a fair ground for everybody to put in input from his constituents.
A direct question. Everybody seems to be taking a pinch. So as a regular Ghanaian, you're going to pay 5.7% more when you go and buy petroleum products. You're going to pay a sanitation levy, you're going to pay pollution levy, you're going to pay COVID-19 levy and so on. Now, all the regular Ghanaians are paying something. That means you're losing a bit. Yeah. I mean, shouldn't it also start from Parliament and the judiciary when, for instance, they take some budget cuts also?
I am saying that Parliament, as we have now, is the solution to everything. Because now it's not going to be, the eyes have it. No, it's going to be a clean discussion. You see, where there is the opportunity for you to defend whatever you are saying, that is where you have to do it well. Because if you are not able to convince your colleagues, they can never vote for you. And I believe this time around it's not going to be a and the ASIV.
Well, we've seen with the approval of the ministers that even though what you're saying, it seems to be the case on paper, eventually all the ministers, even some of those who were threatened not to be approved, got approved anyways.
But you saw the swing in votes.
Yeah.
People from even their own parties were able to vote for the others. Yeah. So that it means that this time around it's not going to be purely political. It's going to be a fair ground for everybody to put in his quota.
Okay, that's your understanding of it. So do you want Parliament to take budget cuts or not?
I am all for it.
You are all for Parliament taking budget cuts?
To come out and discuss it holistically.
Okay, great. Let me ask you also, are you up for Parliament taking budgetary cuts? So the President sent a budget and says that based on what Parliament has presented, he cannot afford 190 million Ghana cedis and that, and so he's cut it out. Do you think that we should allow that to go through?
Oh, I think it shouldn't allow it to go through. They have to cut it. Because if the executives and the judicial and the and the legislator, I think what they have is better than, because in Ghana here, the vulnerable people are more than those technocrat people. So I think they should accept, so that if it cut their money down, they can get some to help our other people, especially the vulnerable people.
So your Parliament should just agree to take care of it?
Yes, they have to agree to what the President is saying.
So interesting views, but let's wrap it up with some discussion on the Apam situation. 11 of them were buried yesterday. I mean, quite tragic, don't you think?
It is, but how can you, that is the kind of country we are. There are no rules guarding anything. People just get up and do whatever they want to do. The place they went, there should be guards there to guard the place, and they should see their intention for going there. They just went there on their own accord, and there was nobody there to guard them.
But the place is supposed to be closed. The beaches are supposed to be closed.
That is why I'm saying that people just get up and do anything they want. If the place, what the government has put in place, that nobody should visit any beaches, and there are security men guarding the place, will somebody have the access to go and even swim? So that is why we say there's lawlessness everywhere.
Well, it could be you next time sharing your thoughts. That was From the Stands with Manuel Karanting. We take a bit of a breather. When we return, we come your way with Showbiz.